Before we dive in, smash that subscribe button, hit like and comment if you think you can handle the chilling truth about what really happened at sea, because what you're about to hear is not for the faint of heart. The Caribbean night was deceptively calm, the moon casting a silver sheen over the endless waves. On the deck of the luxurious cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas, passengers laughed and clinked glasses, oblivious to the shadows slipping silently among them. Inside the ship, the fluorescent lights hummed above polished floors, reflecting off the mahogany railings, hiding the secrets beneath the glamorous surface. Amybradley, 23, a bright, ambitious college student, had been enjoying her vacation with friends. She had always been cautious, aware of the world's dangers, but nothing could have prepared her, or anyone, for the nightmare that was about to unfold. That night she vanished. One moment she was chatting with her friends near the pool deck, the next she was gone. No scream, no struggle, just silence swallowed by the cavernous belly of the ship. When the alarm was raised, the ship's crew scrambled. Surveillance cameras showed her last movements. She had been approached by someone, a shadowy figure whose face was obscured in the grainy footage. The officers reviewing the tapes noticed a glimmer of something sinister, a hand slipping something small into Amy's purse before she walked off. The grainy angle left more questions than answers. Who had she met? What had been taken? As the ship docked at its next port, authorities began their investigation. Amy's cabin was meticulously searched, every drawer and compartment examined. Nothing was out of place, except a tiny scrap of paper tucked under the mattress. The paper had a phone number and a cryptic message: "Don't trust anyone on deck." The handwriting was unfamiliar, jagged, almost desperate. Investigators speculated wildly, but the message's intent remained unclear. Was it a warning, or a trap? Amy's friends were interviewed next. Panic was visible in their eyes, voices trembling as they recounted the last hours they had spent with her. One friend mentioned a man who had been loitering near the railing, watching Amy with what she described as too much interest. Another recalled seeing him vanish into the lower decks, where passengers were rarely allowed. The officers began to suspect the unthinkable, a premeditated abduction. Tension mounted as the crew reviewed the ship's service logs and guest registries. Among the hundreds of passengers, one man's name kept surfacing. Someone with a history of minor offenses but nothing serious enough to trigger alarm bells. Still, his movements on the ship coincided eerily with Amy's disappearance. The officers raced against time, checking every camera angle, every possible exit, but the lower decks were labyrinthine. Someone who knew the ship could navigate it like a shadow. Then, a shocking discovery. During a routine inspection of the ship's storage compartments, a crew member stumbled across a small, locked freezer in a rarely used maintenance area. The freezer hummed faintly, cold enough to preserve anything left inside. Officers pried it open, and found nothing but a worn life vest with Amy's name stitched inside. Her belongings, her passport, even her cell phone were gone. The chilling implication was undeniable. Someone had planned this. Someone had hidden her somewhere, or worse, taken her entirely off the ship. As the investigation intensified, whispers spread among the passengers. Rumors of secret passageways, hidden compartments, and dark corners of the ship where no cameras reached. Fear gripped the crew. Tension crackled in the air like static. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak in the ship's hull sounded like footsteps following them. But the most disturbing clue was yet to surface. When detectives checked the ship's disposal records, they found a receipt for a container shipped to an unknown location in the middle of the Atlantic, marked with a single initial, AB. The handwriting matched the cryptic note found under Amy's mattress. And that's when the realization hit: this was no random disappearance. This was a meticulously orchestrated nightmare, and the true horror was that it wasn't over. If you think this story is intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Hit subscribe, because Chapter 2 will take us deeper into the dark heart of the ship, and into the terrifying truth behind Amybradley's vanishing. If you thought the last chapter was chilling, buckle up, because now we're descending into the darkest corners of the ship where secrets have festered for years. Hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you dare to follow every terrifying detail. The morning sun glinted off the ocean, but there was no warmth on the Rhapsody of the Seas. Investigators returned to the scene, their faces grim. Every corridor, every cabin, every nook and cranny had been combed, but Amybradley remained a ghost in the ship's history, absent, yet impossible to forget. Detective Marcus Keller, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for seeing patterns others missed, pored over the ship's blueprints in a cramped office lined with shipping logs and security tapes. "There's a pattern here," he muttered to his partner, Detective Rene Alvarez, tracing the routes of crew members and passengers alike. Someone knew the layout perfectly. Every dead end, every maintenance passage, every service hatch, they exploited it. As the investigation delved deeper, inconsistencies began to appear. Crew members who initially claimed to have been on duty had falsified their logs. Cameras were mysteriously offline during critical periods. The maintenance tunnels beneath the ship, long thought mundane, revealed hidden panels and narrow corridors, places no passenger would ordinarily tread. It became increasingly clear, Amy hadn't wandered into danger, danger had been waiting for her. Meanwhile, the mystery man from Chapter 1 had vanished without a trace. Interviews with passengers who had interacted with him produced conflicting stories. Some claimed he was charming and polite, others swore he had an unsettling presence. One crew member, after much coaxing, recalled seeing him whisper to Amy near the pool deck just hours before she disappeared. He leaned in close, she smiled at first but then her expression changed. Fear maybe, she said, her voice trembling. The detectives followed a trail that grew colder by the hour. Amy's passport had been used after her disappearance, at least on paper, but when authorities traced the activity, they discovered it was a sophisticated forgery. Whoever had taken her knew how to cover every move, every step, every trace. It wasn't a random crime, it was an orchestrated vanishing act. Tension escalated further when a former crew member came forward anonymously. There are people who operate below decks, he whispered, his eyes darting nervously. They've been hiding things in the ship's underbelly for years. Smuggling, illegal goods, people. The word people hung heavy in the room, an unspoken horror. Could Amy have been swept into something far more sinister than anyone imagined? Hours turned into a frantic night. Every lead pointed to the lower decks, a maze of service corridors, storage rooms and forgotten spaces. Detective Keller and Alvarez descended into the labyrinth, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Every creak of the ship echoed like a warning. Then they found it, a door hidden behind a stack of crates, locked, unmarked. The key was missing, but the scratches on the floor suggested someone had dragged something heavy into the room recently. The detectives pried it open, revealing a room that had been converted into a makeshift holding area. Ropes, locks and restraints littered the floor. A cold draft swept through, carrying the faint scent of bleach and metal. But the most chilling discovery was a set of personal items. Amy's purse, her favorite scarf, even her sunglasses, all arranged neatly on a shelf. Someone wanted her presence known, yet she was nowhere to be found. Then the room revealed a clue that changed everything. A set of handwritten letters torn from a notebook, detailing a plan to kidnap Amy. The letters were meticulous, describing every step, every timing, every contingency. The handwriting matched the note found under her mattress, the same jagged, desperate strokes. It became horrifyingly clear, Amy hadn't disappeared by chance. Someone had been watching her for weeks, maybe months, waiting for the perfect moment. As the detectives studied the letters, a muffled sound echoed from behind the walls, a faint tapping like someone trapped. They froze. Was it a trick of the wind? Or had they just heard a cry for help? The walls themselves seemed to breathe, alive with secrets. And then the phone in the office rang. No one had called, yet a distorted voice whispered, "You're too late. She's gone, but you'll find the next clue where the water meets the night." A chill ran down their spines. The labyrinth of the ship was only the beginning. Amy's disappearance was part of a larger, far more twisted story. If you think Chapter 2 was intense, Chapter 3 will reveal the truth no one wanted uncovered, and it's far darker than you could imagine. Hit subscribe because the end of this mystery will haunt you forever. If you've made it this far, brace yourself. The final chapter is the darkest, the most twisted, and the one that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Hit subscribe and comment below if you think you can handle the truth. The ship had grown eerily quiet. Most passengers were still disembarking, unaware that a nightmare had been unfolding within its gleaming hull. Detective Keller and Alvarez returned to the hidden holding area, determined to follow the cryptic clue, where the water meets the night. Their only option was to investigate the lower cargo decks, areas often overlooked even by seasoned crew. The corridors twisted like a maze, and the dim emergency lights cast elongated shadows that seemed to move on their own. Every step echoed. The tension was suffocating, the silence deafening. Then Keller noticed a faint trail, drops of water, dark and sticky, leading toward a hatch at the far end. The sound of waves slapping against the hull became louder, almost as if the ocean itself was warning them to turn back. They descended through the hatch into the ship's bowels, a cavernous, industrial area filled with storage containers and maintenance machinery. The smell of salt water mixed with something coppery, metallic. The detectives exchanged a glance. Neither needed to speak. They both knew this was where the truth awaited. Suddenly, a shadow flickered across the far end of the deck. Keller called out, but only silence answered. Alvarez drew her flashlight, sweeping the beam across the containers. Then she froze. Inside one, barely visible, was Amybradley, alive but shaken, her wrists bound with rough rope, her eyes wide with terror. "She's here," Alvarez whispered. Keller rushed forward, carefully cutting the ropes. Amy collapsed into his arms, trembling. I don't know how long I've been here," she stammered. He watches everything. I thought no one would find me." Before they could breathe a sigh of relief, a noise behind them made them spin. The man from the surveillance footage, the orchestrator of this nightmare, emerged from the shadows, a cruel smile on his face. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice chillingly calm. "She belongs to the sea now." The confrontation was sudden and violent. Keller lunged, trying to subdue him, but the man was surprisingly strong, throwing tools and crates to create chaos. Alvarez managed to strike him with her flashlight, stunning him long enough to grab Amy and drag her toward the nearest exit. The corridors twisted endlessly, every turn fraught with danger, every shadow a potential trap. Finally, they reached a service ladder leading to the deck. Sirens from the ship's security system began to blare as crew and authorities arrived. The man tried to escape into the water, but a swift response team intercepted him, detaining him as he thrashed and screamed. His calm facade shattered, replaced by the raw panic of a criminal cornered. As authorities questioned him, chilling details emerged. He wasn't acting alone. There was a network of accomplices, individuals who had exploited the ship's hidden corridors for years. Smuggling, black market dealings, and, most disturbingly, targeting passengers. Amy had been chosen at random, or perhaps for her naivety, as a pawn in a far larger, insidious plan. The magnitude of the operation was staggering, more horrifying than anyone aboard the ship could have imagined. Amy, though traumatized, insisted she had to speak out. Her courage inspired the passengers and crew who had feared the unknown. Detective Keller reflected grimly. The ship, once a symbol of luxury and joy, had been a stage for calculated horror. And though justice had been served, for now, the scars it left were indelible. Weeks later, after the ship had returned to port and the case closed, rumors persisted. Passengers whispered about strange noises beneath the decks, shadows moving where no one should be. Some claimed they saw fleeting figures near the storage areas, as if the horror had never truly left. And in a sealed police evidence locker, a single notebook remained, torn pages detailing future targets, each line more sinister than the last. Authorities swore it was evidence, but the truth was undeniable. The nightmare had not entirely ended. They thought the killer was behind bars, but the shadows he left will haunt this ship forever. Amybradley survived, but the terror lingers, hidden where the water meets the night. If you thought this story was intense, make sure to subscribe because some mysteries never truly end.